Hi everyone, my name is Sytske and I'm a final year PhD student at the University of Cambridge Judge Business School. And today I would like to talk to you about electronic waste. Now we all have electronics in the house and we all have to replace them at some point. But when you hand in your old laptop or phone for recycling, have you ever wondered what happens to it? Now this video gives a simple overview of the reverse supply chain, which is the sequence of steps taken from retrieving a product from the consumer to recycling or disposing it, and of course, everything that can go wrong in between. Now, understanding this system is important because ideally we would like to recover as many materials as possible. This is better for the environment because it reduces polluting mining activities, but also forest degradation. But it's also beneficial for our society because it reduces our dependency on imports of raw materials from other countries. And this has become quite a big issue now with the current supply chain disruptions. But unfortunately, the large majority of electronic waste doesn't get recovered or recycled because it's not in the best interest of the firms involved in that reverse supply chain. So a few months ago, an American e-commerce company was found destroying 130,000 items a week in just one warehouse in the UK, which included smart TVs, laptops, and even drones, because it was cheaper than recycling or repurposing them. Now, reducing our electronic waste is of course key, but eventually goods do reach the end of their lives. And right now there's just very little incentive for firms to properly deal with those. So I hope this movie will show how handing in your waste doesn't automatically mean that it ends up where it's supposed to. We do need society and regulators to step in and hold firms more accountable. Now I want to conclude with a little more detail on the research itself. During my PhD, I developed this work in collaboration with agents from Europol, which is the European law enforcement agency, and they are responsible for recommending and enforcing several waste management policies in the EU. Now, research on this topic is important because the system is highly complex and not very transparent. So oftentimes well-intended policy interventions can backfire. So my research carefully considers the effect of different policy interventions and gives some practical recommendations for regulators to avoid these unwanted activities in the reverse supply chain. I hope you enjoy this movie and thank you very much for listening.
When we discard our electronics because they no longer work, or we replace them, they turn into electronic waste, or e-waste. E-waste is the fastest growing waste stream, worth over $62.5 billion, which is more than the GDP of most countries. Yet, only 20% of e-waste is recycled. E-waste has valuable components. For example, your phone contains gold, copper, and palladium. But it also contains batteries, lead, and mercury. These hazardous and toxic substances complicate recycling and make it economically unviable. E-waste is not the only problematic waste stream. For the same reason, industrial waste is also rarely recycled. One example is waste oil. This also contains both valuable and hazardous substances. So what happens when waste is discarded and enters the system known as the reverse supply chain? Typically, there is a manufacturer who generates waste as part of its industrial processes or from end-of-life obligations, such as when you return your phone. From there, it goes to a treatment operator who treats the waste to immobilize the harmful substances and then recovers the valuable components for resale. The revenue is known as the recovery value. The problem is that when the recovery value is too low, alternatives become more attractive and waste starts leaking. These violations take largely one of two forms. Developed countries, where the majority of waste is produced, export to developing countries for cheap disposal. For instance, electronic waste is burned in the open air in order to retrieve valuable commodities such as copper. Other waste gets dumped, polluting water supplies and soils, and having a disastrous impact on the environment and public health. Secondly, the waste can also end up being dumped within the developed country. The area around Naples, for instance, is infamously known as the land of pyres because the dumped hazardous waste around the city keeps catching fire. Anti-dumping and anti-export policies have so far been unsuccessful in eliminating these channels, and one reason is that it is very difficult to assess the recovery value, and so it becomes impossible to predict if the waste will be recycled or leak. This research analyzes what anti-dumping and anti-export policy measures would be most effective in encouraging firms to pursue proper recycling when the recovery value is uncertain.